Canadian police, the Trudeau government, they may have purged the Freedom Convoy protest, arresting people and towing nearly 100 vehicles. They may have won the battle, but because of it, they could lose the war. A Pyrrhic victory, if you will. Leaked messages are coming out showing Mounties mocking people. You've got the deputy prime minister coming out and saying, we need to make our emergency powers permanent to seize your resources, to freeze your banks. The exposure of the elites, well, it's going to hurt them in the long run, and it could lead to greater protest. Hopefully. I'm not entirely sure if people will maintain that energy, but we're all seeing this for what it is now. If it weren't for the protesters up in Canada, we wouldn't know exactly what they wanted to do, why they were going to do it, and they probably would have slipped in this legislation without anyone noticing. But you create an uproar. They are forced to expose what they're doing and who they are, and now we can all see it. Of course, many in the mainstream media would tell you that it's a conspiracy theory. I should say corporate press. It's a conspiracy theory that these world leaders, these corrupt political elites, have a shared agenda. That they're working together in any way is considered to be nonsense. But it's obvious. And it's common sense. That's what I always found strange about a lot of these stories. You'd say something like Trudeau in Canada doing this is on par with a global world agenda or something, and they'll say you're making things up and it's crazy. But then you see Joe Biden's administration talking to Trudeau and telling him to crack down with federal authority on the protests. Like, that's literally reported. We know they're doing it. And they're doing it because they have trade agreements and a shared agenda. The same is true for Europe and these other countries. Of course, world leaders are working together. Why wouldn't they be? I mean, heck, we have the G7, the G20. We have the UN. Of course, they're all working together on a shared agenda. And now we can see the mask slipping. So in a sense, the Freedom Truckers did us a great service by standing up and saying no. And in a sense, Trudeau has also done us a great service, exposing the authoritarian psychopathy that exists within the minds of these political elites. We have several stories, but it extends well beyond just the government. This story really caught my eye. Canadian authorities probe leaked messages of police allegedly celebrating injuring protesters. We have a reporter from Rebel News who was struck and injured by the police. Take a look at this story real quick as we move on. Quote, time for the protesters to hear our jackboots on the ground. This is who these people are. Talk about a glorious, glorious service to all of us. Why? Well, look, when Black Lives Matter goes and burns down buildings, I have in my mind a vision of a good police officer who says, I want to make sure people are safe. I want to make sure the rioters aren't destroying businesses and ruining lives. Instead, what happened in New York? Many of these cops did nothing. What happened in Chicago? Many of these cops did nothing. Why? They were basically trying to punish the city for not providing them the support they thought they deserved. So, mom and pop suffered. Then we got COVID lockdown. And the police said, well, we're exempt in a lot of ways, so we're going to go jackboot, stomp around, and bash windows in ourselves, destroying small businesses. That is not what police are supposed to be. The idea of policing in the police institution, I think, is a good thing. But we can clearly see the pitfalls in it. And now conservatives are getting a strong wake-up call to who the police really are. Now, perhaps many cops, the good ones, they quit. Or perhaps cops in Canada are just trash. Perhaps police in rural areas in the U.S. and more conservative areas do a better job because they hold these principles of their communities. And maybe police in big cities are just awful Democrat-appointed criminals or morons. Either way, it's never good to see journalists injured, arrested, or threatened by police. And to see it happening now to Rebel News it's horrifying. We have this story here from Rebel. Rebel News journalist Alexa Lavoie attacked by Ottawa police. I mean, we're talking about cops beating a woman who's on the ground reporting. They say, on Saturday, the gridlock continued. Amid loud pops, Rebel News' Quebec-based reporter Alexa Lavoie was directly hit by police during the melee, injuring her. Prior to the melee, at least 2 officers can be seen accidentally dropping some of their less lethal firearms and attempting to pick them back up as other officers push back the line. Ezra Levant tweeted, I just spoke with Alexa Lavoie, our brave reporter who was assaulted by Trudeau's police. She tells me a cop hit her 3 times at the club and then shot a tear gas canister at her leg from point blank range. Trudeau has instructed his police to attack journalists. So what's happening now? What's happening now in Canada? Well, it's a big wake-up call for conservatives. As Ezra Levant tweeted, and it went viral, he said that he used to be back the blue. He would back the blue and give them the benefit of the doubt. Not anymore. You know, I've long understood this because I've witnessed it firsthand in Ferguson, at Occupy Wall Street. It's amazing to me that there are people who still maintain that the police gave a free pass to the left. They did in some circumstances. They did in many circumstances. Or to put it mildly, they tend to give more leeway than they would to the right. But it is true that police have brutally beaten protesters on the left. It's true that police have instigated violence. I've watched it happen. Occupy Wall Street became prominent because a cop pepper sprayed 3 women who weren't even in the protest group that was being arrested. Of course, they were protesters, but they were walking on the sidewalk, minding their own business. A protest group was in the street. Police were trying to arrest them. These 3 women started yelling. Tony Baloney, they call him. Anthony Bologna walked over and pepper sprayed these women. Why? For no reason. That's the kind of thing that triggers a response. In response to a tweet from Ezra Levant, where he says, Trudeau's Deputy Prime Minister, Christina Freeland, who is also a director of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum, says she plans to make her emergency powers permanent. I hope you realize where we are going and why I want to stress the point that you better thank your lucky stars for these protesters up in Ottawa. Because a lot of what was going on with the World Economic Forum and these elites has been happening under radar. They've been flying under radar. We've not been seeing it. But because of what happened in Ottawa, they were forced to reveal their hand, at least to a certain degree. She wants to make her emergency powers permanent. In response, I said, a quote from Chrystia Freeland, and this is in jest, mind you, in order to ensure our security and continuing stability, Canada will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society, which I assure you will last for 10,000 years. And then Canada will have peace. That's the joke, right? That's the birth of the empire in Star Wars. For them to come out and overtly just state this is what we're doing, well, it's bold. They've been doing things like this. They want to do more. You see, a lot of people don't realize the social credit score system is being built. The infrastructure is here. Check out Majid Nawaz on Joe Rogan's podcast. The infrastructure for the global social credit system is here. Whether or not they can turn it on is up to you. The Toronto Star, the full text of Chrystia Freeland's remarks during Emergencies Act announcement. It's truly quite amazing. The government will also bring forward legislation to provide these authorities to FinTrack on a permanent basis. And there it is, my friends. They'll freeze your money. They'll steal your assets. They'll tell you that you cannot buy that gallon of milk, for you've had one too many this month. You know, I'm watching Majid Nawaz talk to Joe Rogan about this. And we have this clip here where Majid is talking about programmable currencies. And Majid Nawaz shows a quote as a man in the UK, like the second highest guy, he handles their economic policy. And he says that we want centralized digital currencies that are programmable. Majid goes on to explain what this means. It means that you could have money in the bank and you go and swipe your card and it says this money cannot be used for the purchase of Doritos. Why? You've had too many. Majid says there's another word for this, social credit scoring or social credit system or something to that effect. It was funny because when I heard that, I was like, it's a command economy. It's literal communism. That's what they do. They give you your ledger and you go and you say, I want milk, bread, and eggs. They say you've been allotted 1 milk, 1 bread, 1 eggs for the month. Take it and leave, and you can't come back. Telling you what items you can have. This communism. Social credit score systems. It's funny because we need a new word for it. It's somewhat different. It is. But this is what's coming. Now, I want to show you why I'm bringing this up. In Canada, the deputy prime minister said FinTrack, permanent basis. She's specifically referring to the ability to freeze crowdfunding, to control cryptocurrencies, to freeze your bank accounts. That's what they're implementing. The Daily Mail reports. Canadian MP says single mom on minimum wage has had her bank account frozen for donating $50 to the Freedom Convoy. Trudeau is blasted for draconian law that would have never been imposed on Black Lives Matter. Canadian MP Mark Strahl tweeted Sunday, the bank account of a single mom called Brianne was frozen. Authorities say 206 bank accounts had been frozen under the power granted by the Federal Emergencies Act. The powers have been in effect, but Parliament is expected to ratify the action on Monday. Oh, there you go. Financial accounts of those who refuse to leave the protests in Ottawa will remain frozen while the act is in force. The Ottawa protests, the movement's last major stronghold, appeared to be largely over by Sunday. Fencing and police checkpoints remained. And they're going to be bringing back the fencing to D.C. as well. They want you to know it is not a government of the people anymore. They own you. They own the system. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Now, this story is scary. This is a woman who heard online protesters are driving through the streets. They're driving down the highways. And she said, I'll give $50. The story as it's being told is that at the time she donated, the protest wasn't deemed illegal. The protest was deemed a protest or a convoy. So what happens is, here's what'll happen. I'll tell you what happened to you. You hear in the news, a guy wants to give out free hugs. And you say, I like that idea. So you donate $50 to the Free Hugs Man. A month goes by and the Free Hugs Man has a group of people giving free hugs downtown during a pandemic. And they say this is an illegal action and anyone who supported it will have their assets frozen. And you say, I didn't support the 50 people doing it. It was the one guy. No one cared. This was the story as it goes. And maybe it's not true. Maybe she donated after. I don't know. What's being reported is she donated when the government wasn't cracking down on this, when it was just truckers honking their horns. Single mom, you will have your bank account frozen. They will do it to you. You know what, man? I've been saying this for a while. You take a look at those protests up in Milwaukee, I think it was, in Wisconsin, where Black Lives Matter set fire to a house twice, where they then went to someone else's home to protest him. And when he brandished a shotgun from inside his own home, the police arrested him. I warned you, and I'll warn you again. I said this a year and a half ago. I'll say it now. Said it almost 2 years ago. They will come to your house, the police. They will arrest you. So don't back the blue. We're past this. I assure you, this will be the case. I love how the left freaked out and they posted this video saying, Tim Pool on unhinged rant. Whatever. I'm right. Here's what'll happen. Black Lives Matter or Antifa will show up in front of your home to protest you, saying you're a bigot. And you'll say, stay off my property. I'll tell you what's already happened. When you then try and say, I am armed, and if you come in here, the cops will arrest you. Why? It's easier to arrest one person than it is to arrest 50. So if 50 people throw up screaming, the cops are going to be like, just arrest the guy who's in his own home watching football because it's easier. And you think it won't happen to you. It will. It's already happened to many people. I'll tell you what happens next. After the extremists are emboldened, because the government is empowering them, your assets are frozen. They show up to your house like they did Tucker Carlson. And they bang on your door. Bang, bang, bang. And they break it. And then the media lies and says, no, never happened. No, they're exaggerating. Your wife hides in the cupboard like Tucker's wife did as lunatics bang on the windows. I'll tell you what happens. Cassandra Fairbanks, a good friend of mine, in her home in D.C., and they started launching fireworks at her house and banging on her windows. They will terrorize you. They want you to know. They want you to feel unsafe. What happens next? I have seen these mobs in action. They're effectively an apparatus of the state, mind you, and that's why the state allows them to do what they do. Like in, I think it was Portland, where they smashed up a storefront and then burned all their merchandise in the street. When the crowd comes to your home and bangs on your door, one of these days, one of your doors will break open and the door will be pushed aside. And then a couple of the people in the crowd will peek inside. And as they walk to the door and take a look inside to see what's going on, the door broke open, other people will see them and think they must be going in. So those people will walk forward and walk in the house. Other people will see them walk in the house, and then everyone will. Let me explain to you how this happens. At protests in New York City, you've got facilitators, as they call them. They're in front of the march, and they're fanning them in a certain direction. They then bring them up certain streets and point. Something I learned long ago, which is very hilarious. You can control the direction of the crowd by simply walking in front of them. So one day, I was walking in front of the crowd, and they were going down Broadway, I think, and I turned left off of Broadway. Why? Because I wanted to just let them start passing me by, but several other people walked in the same direction when they saw me walk in the direction, probably assuming that's the way the march was going. And then the march went in that direction. Now, I'm not saying I commanded or moved the march or anything like that. It may have just been that me and a few other journalists did the same thing at the same time, but everyone assumed the journalists were the leaders and they followed them. And all of a sudden, they're marching down a side street. Because someone sees you and follows, everyone else does. Like a swarm, like birds in the sky, right? If your door gets kicked in or broken by someone banging on it, that person may not have had the intention of going inside your house. But someone else will see the door open and assume, hey, what happened? The door opened. And then like dominoes falling, people will pour in. Then they'll start smashing your stuff. Then they'll beat you. They'll push you down the stairs. You think it's not going to happen? You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. We're already at the point where they were banging on Tucker Carlson's door, wife hiding in the cupboard. We're already at the point where they've shown up to people's homes. We're already at the point where in Wisconsin, I believe it was, they set fire to someone's house twice. The fire was put out. They came back and set fire to it again. That's where we're at. And the government, the US, Canadian, UK, whatever, they wouldn't do this to BLM. Of course not. So what we see now is anarcho-tyranny. On the ground, BLM and other extremists will be able to smash up your windows and kick your doors in and trespass on your property. And you can't do anything about it. Mostly in cities, mind you. If you live in the middle of nowhere like West Virginia, you'll probably be okay because you're probably armed. And the cops out there are probably, more likely to be Trump supporters. But imagine this scenario. The far left extremists come to your house and you threaten them, stay away from my home. Look what happened in Portland. People are dead. The government then says, we're going to have to freeze your bank accounts because, you're an extremist. Once we get to that social credit scoring system that Majid Nawaz is talking about, and he's completely correct, there will come a point where Black Lives Matter will be marching down the street and they will have full access to millions, tens of millions of dollars. You'll organize a protest and then your bank accounts will be frozen. They will use this power to force people out of business, to silence people, because they pray that you are a coward. They're betting on it. Don't let them be right. Their hope is that as they freeze banks, steal your money, and support far-left extremism, they hope you'll remain terrified. And so you won't speak up. You won't speak out. You won't protest. It's the easiest thing, really. Just give up. Don't fight. You're a loser. That's what they're hoping. But as we've seen with the truckers, a small amount of thoughtful and dedicated people had a serious impact. Now, I'm a fan of nonviolent civil disobedience. I'm no fan of any kind of violence and disorder or anything like that. Why? It's fascinating to see politicians and the elites. They want the status quo. They want everything to remain fine. They want their wealth. They want it to work. Well, I don't completely disagree. Greta Thunberg says, get rid of fossil fuels, and it's like that would kill tens of millions of people. We don't want that. No, we want stability too. But what we don't want is centralized authority. Why? When authority is hyper-centralized, you get instability. Let me spell it out for Trudeau and for Biden and for all of these other psychopaths. Wealth inequality Well, that happens when that gets too high, you get civil war. It's one of the reasons we're probably seeing civil war. It's true. The left doesn't have the answers to it. They propose psychotic authoritarian solutions that don't work. If too few people control too much power, eventually you get too many people with too little power saying we have no confidence in the system. You need a certain degree of decentralization to allow people who are aggrieved to have a redress of grievances. Otherwise, those people who are aggrieved will just tear the system down. That's what I find so funny about the left's argument. They say, white fragility and white grievance or whatever, and they're just like, you don't actually have any claims or whatever. And I'm like, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter if you're brown, black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever. If you feel aggrieved and you do not get some kind of release, you'll demand it and you'll take it. And that's everybody. And that's kind of where we're heading. What Canada is doing right now is one of the most dangerous things we've seen in any Western nation. But the good news, I suppose, that it's exposing them. A lot of this stuff about programmable currency and social credit system was happening behind the scenes. They're building out this infrastructure behind the scenes. This has forced them out into the open. So be peaceful, be safe. Do not let them win. People in Canada, y'all should be filing every possible lawsuit you can. Truly dark days. Cryptocurrencies may be the answer because they can try and stop them, but they can't. They really can't. What they're hoping is that once everyone's got a crypto account, they can just tell financial institutions to stop trading with certain accounts. Well, unfortunately, you can always just make a new wallet address. It's very difficult to stop. We'll see how this plays out. Canada, stay strong. I think things are getting dark, and I think if any civil war does happen in the U.S., Canada will be engulfed as well. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.